Welcome, right smack dab here in the middle of my studio. So excited to see you. And, of course, for this lovely, lovely, sentimental story. I want to tell you just a couple things about it, then show you a quick and easy puppet. It was written in 1922. Next year, being how it's 2021, it will be 100 years old. And that means that it is what we call a classic. People still read it. It still wins. Oh, see who's behind my back here? Right here. Hmm. He'll be out later. He's just kind of getting excited about coming out. Story's called The Velveteen Rabbit. Velveteen is a kind of material, not as fancy as velvet. Very important part of the story. But the Velveteen Rabbit is, well, I'm not giving you any hints. It was written by Margery Williams. Again, in 1922 is when it was published. It was her biggest success, the one that is still read wildly. She then wrote a young adult book that was also a hit, but this one clearly tops it off. And, towards the end of her life, she started to write with her daughter. So I think that's always very cool. I like to remind you that a writing partner can be just about anybody. The illustrations in this book are quite wonderful. I'm going to show you one because it also illustrates the moods of her stories. And here is the Velveteen Rabbit. If you can read the subtitle, it says Anxious Times, which is a very important part of our story today. So, this is how the book looked when it came out in 1922. It is not an original copy. Wouldn't that be great? But that's how it looked. Throughout the course of the book's life, and books do have lives, just like us, it has been done in a variety of ways. It has been made into film, short pieces as well. And the story we're going to take this from today is a classic. Where did it go? Oh, it's hiding behind my back, like the rabbit, right? This is called a classic board book, and as you can see, the illustrations are quite different, although set in the time. And the subtitle of our book, by the way, is The Velveteen Rabbit, or How Toys Become Real. And for those of us who believe, including such writers as Hans Christian Andersen, that toys have a life form of their own, this is the kind of book you would want to read or be read to. So, the principle of our story, the hero, the Velveteen Rabbit peeking behind my shoulder, is one that is not a puppet I made, but so cuddly. He could actually have been the hero of my story if I were a little boy reading this story. But I'm not. So I bought him. I bought him to help me tell the story. But I did make him a carrot, just in case he gets hungry. Mm-hmm. I will keep it. You know what? I'm going to give it to this dolly over here. Would you hold on to the carrot for the Velveteen Rabbit? Thank you so much. Don't eat it, because you're made of felt too. So what can you make a rabbit out of? Well, let me take you home when I was a little girl. We would sit around the table with my grandparents, my grandma, my grandpa, my big brother, and my grandpa was a storyteller of sorts. It was very serious, but stories to him were hugely important. And he liked to illustrate them by making characters. I learned later on that in the 1920s, probably right after this book was written, he sold puppets made out of socks. But I didn't know that when I became a puppeteer, but I like to think that maybe somewhere he's paying attention. So he would take the napkin. We used, this does not work with paper, cloth napkin off of the table. He would put it on his hand. My hand is right there. And then take this tip here, and he would pull it through this finger and this finger, right? These two, first and middle, okay? Not your thumb. And then we had, oh yeah, you can see it appearing before you. And then over here, we have the other bunny ear. There there he is, a bunny. You wiggle your nose? It's very important for bunnies to be able to wiggle their nose. Hi. And then what my grandpa would do, of course, I was always so amazed. He would say the magic words, and the bunny would disappear. What are the magic words you say? Hocus pocus. So let me do it for you once again. Make your fist. You make love, not hit. Okay? Put it a little bit longer over there. Maybe if you keep the back by your wrist, that'll give you bigger ears. Because our bunny is a lop-eared bunny. One ear. And the other. Oops. Here. Now, do you make mistakes every once in a while? Well, I certainly do. So this bunny looks a little bit different than the last bunny. A lop-eared bunny, which is what the Velveteen rabbit is, has ears that go down. And that's a particular kind. And they are from England. But we have lop-eared bunny. We even have one in our family. Not at my house, but in my granddaughter's house. Or her parents' house. She lives there too. And that bunny's name is Yodel. So I'm going to tell this story just for Yodel and you, which start with the same letter Y. So again, we will say, pick up his ears and say, hocus pocus, bunny, disappear. Now, for those of you who are a little bit more adventurous, you can make a bunny out of one of these. They too are soft. They're used for painting walls. They're called paint rollers. It is the perfect bunny maker. So what do you need to do that? You need a piece of felt. Well, granted, this is a little bit fancier. So I'm going to put this here so you'll know I'm not hiding anything on you. And I'm going to draw. And I'm not going to draw. I'm just going to cut. Because, wow, look like I'm hiding behind a column here. What I'm going to do is make 2 ears at once. And you can just do that. Or if you want to be fancy, and why not? What? That's why we're here. You can also do this entire puppet out of paper. I just happened to have a paint roller around, and I thought, what would I rather do, paint the wall or make a puppet? You like the entrance? Ta-da! All right, take one of these, put one on your lap, and then you take one of these, take your column, your paint roller back, stick it right in here, bunny ear. Then you take the other one, and you put it over here, bunny ear. This is a lop-eared bunny, like our friend in the story. Now, what do you do to make a bunny nose? You get something round and you put it there. You take a couple of buttons and you put it there. And of course, you have to have a bunny tail. So, put that little ball right there. Guess what I have? I have one already made to show you. Here he goes. You done? Okay, there. Really? So much trouble with my cast today. There you go, bud. Okay. So what has he got? He's got a face. He's got 2 lop ears. And on the back, he has a tail. He is quite adorable. And we could tell the whole story with this bunny. But we're not gonna. Because I have a star for my story. But my star is the person. It's not a person. He's a rabbit. The rabbit I'm going to tell the story to as if he were my little boy. So what do you need to do to make a bunny? You either need to go to a lovely dinner and take a cloth napkin. If you're in a restaurant, please do not take the napkin on the table. You can also use a handkerchief. The bigger the handkerchief, the better. Or a piece of square cloth. Anything works. And to make something lovely like this dude, a nice soft paint roller rabbit, which is a new variety, you need a paint roller. You need a couple of button eyes. And then, voila, bunny. Lots of stories about bunnies. Snuggle bunny. How Much Do I Love You has a bunny in it. So many stories, and an entire collection of stories by Beatrix Potter named Peter Rabbit is in one of them. All sorts of stories about bunnies and ducks and geese. Wow, we have a lot to do. But right now, I want you to settle in for a story. And in order to tell you that story, you have to meet the Velveteen Rabbit. I'll be right back. You didn't move. You're supposed to have gone over there. Okay. Are you ready? I'm going to pretend that I'm telling the story to you. So you have to listen very carefully. And because you are a toy, and because you do not move until you are real, you have to sit still. Can you do that? Very still. Lovely job. Okay. There was once a Velveteen Rabbit, and in the beginning he was really splendid. He was fat and bunchy, as a rabbit should be. His coat was spotted brown and white, and his ears were lined with pink sateen. He was naturally shy, and being only made of velveteen, some of the other toys snubbed him. The only person who was kind to him was the horse. The horse was very wise, and he'd seen many mechanical toys, and he knew that they were only toys who would never turn into anything else, who would never be real. What is real? Asked the rabbit one day. Real isn't how you are made, said the horse. It's a thing that happens to you when a child loves you for a long, long time. By the time you are real, you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. There was such a person in the nursery called Nana, and she went swooping about like a great wind and hustled all the toys, playthings away in cupboards. The tin ones hated it, but the bunny, the rabbit, didn't mind it so much, for wherever he was tossed, he landed softly. One evening, when the boy was going to bed, he couldn't find the china dog to sleep with. Here, said the Nana, take this bunny. That night, and for many nights, the Velveteen Rabbit slept in the boy's bed. And so time went on, and the little rabbit was very happy, so happy that he never noticed how his beautiful velveteen fur was becoming shabbier, and his tail became unsewn, and all the pink got rubbed off of his nose where the little boy had kissed him. Once a little rabbit was left out after dusk, and Nana had to go and look for him with a candle, because the boy couldn't go to sleep unless the rabbit was there. Fancy all that fuss made over a toy. Oh, you mustn't say that, said the boy. He isn't a toy. He's real. Well, when the little rabbit heard that, he was happy, for he knew that what the horse had said was true at last. He was real. The boy himself had said it. Near the house there was a wood. One evening, while the rabbit was lying there alone, nice job, he saw two strange beings. They were rabbits like himself, but quite furry and brand new. They stared at him, and the little rabbit stared back, and all the time their noses were twitching. He hasn't gotten any hind legs. They stared at him more. He doesn't smell right, the wild rabbit exclaimed, jumping backwards. He isn't a rabbit at all. He isn't real. I am real, said the rabbit. The boy said so. Come back and play with me. I know I'm real. But there was no answer. Weeks passed, and the little rabbit grew very old and shabby. But the boy loved him just as much. He loved him so hard that the pink lining to his ears turned gray and his brown spots faded. Then one day, the boy was sick. The little boy was so hot that it burned the rabbit when he held him close. The Velveteen Rabbit lay there, hidden from sight, under the bedclothes. He never stirred. He was afraid that if they found him, someone would take him away, and he knew that the boy needed him. Presently, the boy got better. The room had to be disinfected, and all of the toys and the books that the boy had played with in bed must be burned. "What about this old bunny?" said the Nana. "That?" said the doctor. "Why, it's a mass of scarlet fever germs. Burn it at once." And so the little rabbit was put into a sack and carried out to the garden. The little rabbit felt very lonely. A tear trickled down his little shabby velvet nose and fell to the ground. Where the tear had fallen, a flower grew. The blossom opened, and out of it stepped the nursery magic fairy. She said, "I take care of all the little playthings that the children have loved. When they are old and worn out, I turn them into real." "Wasn't I real before?" said the bunny. "You were real to the boy because he loved you. Now you shall be real to everyone." She flew with the little rabbit into the wood where the wild rabbits danced. "I've brought you a new playmate," she said to them. "Be kind to him. Teach him all the things he needs to know in Rabbitland." And then she kissed the rabbit again and flew off. The little rabbit stood very still for a moment. He didn't want them to see that he was made all in one piece. He didn't know that the fairy had changed him. Just then, something tickled his nose, and he began to move it. He lifted up his hind leg like rabbits do to scratch it. He actually had hind legs. Instead of dingy velveteen, he now had brown fur, soft and shiny. He was a real rabbit at last. The seasons passed, and the boy went out to play in the wood, and he saw two rabbits. One of them had strange markings under his fur, and the boy thought to himself, "Why, he looks just like my old bunny." But he never knew that it was his old bunny come back to look at the child who first helped him to be real. Margery Williams believed that the toys have a life of their own, that they talk to each other, that they, with a lot of faith and a lot of work, can become real if they're loved enough. She was one brilliant story writer. I wish for you a day of love, a day of laughter, a day of real joy. And that, my good friends, is the end of our tale.